Hello, thanks for watching. My name's Alex with AIM Email Marketing, and today I want to go into why you would send quantity over quality. So, when does it make sense to send more emails that are less relevant to people? And this is a recommendation that sounds a little counterintuitive, but I just want to show you how powerful it can be to target everyone with a broad message versus a small fraction of your audience with a very narrow and specific and high quality message. And I'm doing this because I see a lot of brands that I audit have very specific flows and kind of get lost in these very narrow branchy browse abandonment and cart abandonment flows that go into all directions because they want to be very specific. And why the thought behind is very good to add value to your audience. The result is often that people just kind of give up on creating these flows because they get way too complicated and it's very difficult to extract any meaningful data from them. So I want to show why you should focus on quantity versus quality in flows. So let's look at the data here. This is for one client. They have all these browse abandonment flows running at the same time. Um, So the first three flows are category specific flows. So that means we're sending them to people who have viewed a specific category of products and and we're targeting them with a product specific message. So it's much more relevant to them um, than a generic message. And it has a much higher chance of getting them to convert and to become customers just because the message is very specific for them. And then next we have the standard flow, and that's the flow that we're going to compare to our specific flows. So this is basically a generic message. It does have a dynamic product image, but that's as far as customization go. The message and the copy and the images are the same, and also the information level. Whereas in the specific flows, we go much deeper into why specific products, how they work, why they're good for the customer, and so on. This one is the same as the standard flow. It just uses another software to collect people, but I'm actually going to hide this one because it doesn't really matter to the point of quantity versus quality. So we have these four flows that we're comparing to each other. Um, and let's get started. So first off, just to the first two columns are just explaining the difference in recipients. So this is the total number of recipients for each of them. And as you can see, just visually, I mean, the numbers are much smaller for the specific flows. Even if you pull them together, they don't even get close to the specific, to the generic flow. And this column is just another metric to explain each specific flow as a fraction of the generic flows. So this is 0.9% of the recipients that this flow is getting, and this one is 0.07% of the recipients that this flow is getting. So this is just to give you an idea visually of the difference in the numbers just on the recipients side. And this it's to explain the next column, which is revenue. And as you can see, even if we put the three columns together here of the very specific flows, it only comes down to about $7,000 in recipients in revenue versus 50,000 for the generic flow. So this is just to show you that the huge difference in recipients makes up for the specificity of, and how well targeted the narrow emails are. Just because they're sending to a much, much smaller portion of your audience, they become much less powerful than a generic flow that goes out to everyone, targets everyone with a generic message that doesn't resonate with them quite as well. And but it goes out to so many people that it drives a lot more revenue in the end. So this is the first point. You want to go basic before you go specific. And it's really important because all these brands that I see that have go really specific before they go basic, they often skip the generic flow because they don't want to target their audience with a generic message. And so they miss out on all this revenue. And then they end up with a bunch of flows that are barely getting any revenue, even though they put in 5 times as much work as if they just made a generic email that covers everyone first and then started branching out. So this is really important. If you don't have this, it also applies to the cart abandonment, site abandonment, and every other step of your funnel, pre and post purchase. Um, go broad before you go narrow. Once you've covered all these revenue opportunities that are going to bring you that much money, and just go generic and try to cover every single person that go through your funnel at every stage of the funnel. Once you have that all covered, you can go narrow. And now let's talk about why going narrow even makes sense. Because based on those numbers, you might think, well, is it even worth the work? There will be a point where your browse abandonment kind of reaches a plateau. You don't want to add too many emails to a flow because then it's going to interfere with campaigns and other flows. But and you can only go so far with A/B testing. You can always A/B test, but once you've reached a certain level, you're not going to be able to drive a lot more revenue through A/B testing. You're just going to be optimizing. So going narrow is a very good way to increase incremental revenue. Um, and the next two columns explain that. So as you can see here, this is the revenue per recipient. We're getting 39 cents per recipient in the standard flow. So that's not a lot. And then if you compare that to these other values here, we're getting a lot more revenue per recipient. And that's not surprising because these flows are going to a much smaller segment that is, and with a message that is much more targeted towards these people. And then the last metric here is the efficiency metric, and it works the same as the coverage metric here. I use this as a baseline for revenue per recipient, and then this is how much more revenue per recipient you are getting from each of these flows. So as you can see, it kind of fluctuates here, 7 or 9 times more revenue per recipient. And then this one even drives 36 times more revenue per recipient than the generic flow. And this is where the power of going narrow lies. So once you've gone broad and once you've targeted every single person with a generic message, going narrow is going to be your best way to optimize and get more money out of existing recipients. So let me know if you have any questions and follow me for more deep dives and email marketing strategies. Thank you.